It's time for the Unexplained News. Extraterrestrials, time anomalies, dimensions, remote viewing, UFOs, UAPs, and USOs, ghostly encounters, abductions, Bigfoot, and more. Your end of the week news source for everything unexplained. Here is your host for the Unexplained News podcast, Margie Kay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Unexplained News. I'm Margie Kay, and we are going to be here this evening with a very special guest. We've got a nice addition for you. If you are into all strangeness and high strangeness, then stay tuned because we've got it all for you tonight. I do want to remind everybody that we have got something very unusual in our store at unexnetwork.com, the anti-Mothman t-shirt that repels Mothman. There is a story behind that. I know you probably all heard it before, but basically we had a Mothman attack in 2023 at XCon, and a couple of people, Michelle Roos, sprayed some special spray that she makes, and also we had some CBD there that was provided by one of our vendors, Eric. And oh my gosh, he's got some magic CBD, and that Mothman took off. So hence we have the anti-Mothman t-shirt. Want you to also remember that we have this new book out. Myself and Violet Wisdom, we wrote this book, How to Research a Haunted House. There's nothing else out there like it, so I invite you to check that out, and you can get that at Amazon. And please do leave us a review if you do read that book. We'd appreciate it. My guest tonight is Dale Robinson. Dale served in the Navy. Let me move this over. On the USS Fife, which it was a Spruance Class Destroyer. I'm going to have to ask him what that means. He served as a pastor for 15 years. He's married and has 2 grown children. Dale always had a fascination with the stars, as many of us have. The first Star Wars movie, A New Hope, fueled his passion even more. Dale says that he's always known that we're not alone. Dale has had paranormal experiences of all types since age 6. He hosts the show Observer of Anomalous Objects on YouTube. Welcome to the program, Dale.
Thank you, Margie. It's nice to be here.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate being on your show some time back, and wanted to return the favor. And of course, you know, you and I are into a lot of these things. And of course, everybody's experiences are a little bit different. So I'd like to delve into your experiences. When did strange things first start happening to you?
Well, they really began, I didn't realize the depth of it, but really about age 6. There were some synchronicities, though, that really, which I'd like to talk about those first, if that's okay, because to me, they were like arrows pointing back to, we lived in Coachella when I was 6 years old. And I always, when I look back at Coachella now, to me, that's ground zero. I mean, if we're going to talk about when it all began, at least as far as I can tell, excuse me, it was Coachella. Now, there's a conference that goes on in the Coachella Valley called Contact in the Desert. I kind of consider that, you know, I had the original Contact in the Desert. But anyway, if you don't mind, I'll start with some of the things that happened. The one is, it goes way back about 8 years ago, so it doesn't really fit in with the other synchronicities, but I think it's important to go ahead and talk about it. And that was a ghost event that I had in the church. I was doing preparing for a memorial service, and we had the door shut, the windows were shut. I was up front. We'd taken the communion table and put it at the center of the aisle, and we'd put the picture of the lady who had died on the right side. We had the urn in the middle, and we had some flowers on the left side. And so I'm standing up there, and remember, the doors are shut, the windows are shut, and all of a sudden this wind comes shooting down the aisle, comes out of nowhere, and it knocks over the dead lady's picture, and only the dead lady's picture. Didn't
Oh
knock
my
over the flower,
goodness.
didn't knock over the urn, but and it just kind of freaked me out because having been a pastor, having studied Greek, I knew that the same word for spirit, pneuma, is the exact same word for wind. And then
Oh,
I was watching season 7 of Expedition X, and Josh was going to send his team out to this Transylvanian forest. It's that area where there was nothing would grow, and it was a haunted forest. And so 15 years earlier, they had been out there, and they had his cameraman out there, watching for stuff. And all of a sudden, this wind came shooting out of nowhere, hit the cameraman, drug him backwards, even scraped his arms. But once again, it was wind. And it just absolutely the parallels, although I didn't get hit with the wind, the picture did. And my assumption on it, after looking back at it and evaluating it, is it was that lady's spirit, that she came in to make some kind of statement, and
yeah.
she was upset. She was upset about something, and I'm not sure what she was upset about, but she was making a point, and I definitely knew she was upset.
Oh yeah, that's quite obvious. I had something similar to that happen a few years ago when my aunt passed away. Now my aunt loved candlelight and she hated electric lights. She just
Mhm.
would turn them off in the house all the time. At her funeral, we're getting ready. It was just the family there before everybody else arrived. All the lights went off in the church,
Oh my goodness.
and only the candlelight was up. And we're like, "Oh, hi,
She
hello, Aunt." It was
she
her.
made an entrance.
Yeah, not quite as dramatic as the wind, but
Yeah.
they will do that.
Well, yeah, and I
Yeah.
put a video together, and that's on my channel as well. If anybody ever wants it, actually, inside the church, so you could visualize exactly what I just said. The other group of synchronicities, like I said, I've really come to the conclusion that they were pointing me back to Coachella, and I'll mention the stuff that happened there. But let's just quickly go through some of those. And July 7th of 2023, my wife and I were out looking for orbs. We went to the Mallard Creek golf course. She had her telescopic binoculars. I had my night vision. And so we were looking, and all of a sudden I saw this, what looked like a huge yellow orb. It was way bigger than a star, and it was going from west to east. And it wasn't going super fast, but it was making a pace. And all of a sudden it went behind this tree. And when it came out the other side of the tree, it wasn't just yellow anymore. It was red and blue. And so that was kind of a neat thing. The first time I think we went out actually looking for orbs or, some kind of NHI, it was there. And so that was interesting. The next one would go into the field of what I call, psychic. I was out at the golf course. It was probably 2 months later, somewhere around August, September. But we were on the Kurt and I, a buddy of mine, we were on the 11th hole, and he had hit his ball in the hazard. And as I was going out there to help him find that golf ball, something said to me, I don't know how to explain it other than like an impression. Maybe it was a soft voice, but it told me that I was going to find a Titleist Pro V1 golf ball. Now I have to remember I'm at a golf course, right? And so
Yeah.
finding a golf ball is not a big deal. But finding a specific golf ball, not only, a certain brand, but a certain model to go with that brand. And if you don't know golf, you probably don't understand that they're probably between all the different brands and models, there's probably 150 to 200 different golf balls. And so this is very, very specific. And I almost said something to my friend, but I thought, boy, if I don't find this, he's going to think I'm absolutely batty. He's going to think I'm crazy. So I kept my mouth shut. And so we went out there looking. I didn't find any golf balls, and my friend found his. And so I was just ready to give up. And all of a sudden I looked down, and under this leaf, I could see something white. And I picked up the leaf, and it was a golf ball. And I picked the golf ball up, and it said Titleist on it. And God is my witness. I said, what are the odds? And I rotated it around, and it was a Pro V1. And that's like 1 in 200, 1 in 150. But that's the only golf ball I found. And I found it like last minute. Now I've had things come to me. I think I have some psychic abilities. There's just things I know that I shouldn't know. There's things that I sense that I've proven to be true over and over again. But I've never had something so specific that it's like it's an exact thing. It's like the exact Titleist, an exact Pro V1. And so that was the next one. Like I said, I think all of this was pointing back to Coachella. The next one really blew me away. This was when Lewis and the other whistleblowers were getting death threats. But I'm in my house, and all of a sudden I hear what sounds like a helicopter. And I'm kind of intrigued because I'm going, the helipad's at the other end of town. And so I'm going to go check it out because why is Life Flight over here? And so as I'm getting ready to go out of the house, I got 2 German Shepherd guard dogs, and they bark at everything. In fact, I had a helicopter come by the house yesterday, I think it was, and they were barking at it. But as I was going out the door, I looked at them, and they were alert. Their ears were up, but they didn't bark. And that was weird in itself because they bark at everything. And so I get outside, and I notice it's to the north, and I can see lights, and I can hear it. And pretty soon I notice it's coming towards me. And it keeps coming towards me. And eventually it's over my house. And I'm looking at the lights that I can see on it. And I'm like, this is a huge, if this is a helicopter, this is a huge helicopter. And so I'm trying to figure out why it's so quiet. Now, when it comes to helicopters, I'm not ignorant when it comes to helicopters. Because when I was in the Navy, I was part of the flight crew. My job was to run under the helicopter and put the chain and chocks, literally to secure the helicopter to the deck. And so I'm familiar with how loud helicopters are supposed to be. You know, that back area over there and the back on the fantail, that's where the landing position is. And so I would go do that. And so I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this thing and I'm going, why is it so quiet? This is way quiet. And then the next thing I realize, there's no rotor wash. And if you know anything about helicopters, they create rotor wash. And I've got trees surrounding my house, 50, 75 feet tall, branches and things should be coming because they're literally right above the tree line. And it kind of freaked me out because I'm going, man, how in the world are they not hitting those trees? That just seems pretty dangerous. And then later on, something came to me, and that is that there were no anti-collision lights on this object. I should have been seeing a strobing every 40 to 100 times a minute, you know, the anti-collision lights. And so that wasn't there. And if that wasn't weird enough, it left and then it came back and hovered over my house a second time. But here's where it gets bizarre. As I was staring at this object for a split second, I thought, man, if this didn't sound like a helicopter or similar to one, I would think this was NHI. I would think this is some kind of craft. And so I'm staring at it, and it's almost surreal. In fact, the way I described it was like a religious experience. It's like I had some kind of communion. It was not like Jake Barber mentioned. I mean, if you saw the Jake Barber interview, he was hauling an 8-gon flying saucer, you know, as part of his job. And all of a sudden these emotions came over him, and just unbelievable emotions. But one of the things that he said that really hit me was the sense that he said that it was like a religious experience. And I thought, wow, that's exactly the way I described it. Now, he used different wording than I would use. He used the word possessed. I would recommend it commune. But and I think it's still communing with him. With as far as mine was, it was in the moment. And it was magical. That's the only way. It was like one of the most wonderful feelings you've ever had and stuff. So that happened, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. About a month later, that was at my home. About a month later, I'm in my office, and I'd noticed these ants on my wall, right? And about 2 days later, I noticed they hadn't really moved. And so I went over there and looked at them, and there were about 12 ants on my wall. 5 of them were in a line like ants do, and the other ones were spread out. One was on the cord for a blind, and it's really weird because I have pictures of it. It looks like it's peeking at something, but they're all dead. They're all dead. Every one of them are dead. They died in place. It appears they died at the exact same time. And here's the crazy part. There's no sign of trauma. My first phone call was to a professional exterminator because I knew something was strange about this. And he'd done that. He'd had his own business for 30 years. And he told me he'd never seen anything like it. Now, some people tried to say, well, maybe it was like a fungus. Well, the problem with that is I found 2 more that had died 5 months later, and one of them, it looked like it was still alive. I have a picture of it. If you blow the picture up, it looks like there's nothing wrong with it. And that's the thing about these ants. They didn't look like there was anything wrong. Whatever killed them, it killed them all. And it killed them instantly, and it killed them in place. Because my wife did some research, and when ants die, the living ants in the colony will come get them, because the dead ants will let off an oleac scent. And so they'll come and recover the bodies. Well, nobody came for these ants.
And were they actually just stuck on the wall?
They were on the wall. It would be like they're normally. I don't know if that's in itself is super.
I mean, so when they die, they don't just fall off?
I don't know. I know normally when ants die, especially when you spray them, they will curl up. And these ants look just like they were alive 1 second and dead the second. It'd be like this way I'll explain it, Margie. It's like you and me dying instantly, and we're in this exact position. And people come and look at us and go, "Whoa, wonder what world happened to them." But they look alive. We're looking at them, they're not talking or anything, but they're like frozen in position. There's no sign of trauma at all. And like I said, 5 months later, I found ants on my south wall and on my west wall, and they almost looked. The one on the south wall had the dimple in the back going in a little bit, but you think in 5 months those things would really have deteriorated. But the one on the west wall, it looked absolutely pristine. And I'm just like, what in the world can kill something so fast that it doesn't even see it coming? Because every explanation people have given me, like an electrical surge or something like that. Well, first of all, electrical surge isn't going to cover the whole room. But you would also expect to see some kind of trauma on the ants from the electrical force of hitting them. And so that was just another one of those things. I don't have an explanation for it. The only thing I could come up with, and even it doesn't make sense, is like time stopped for them and they died, and that was it. And that's, like I said, I'm not trying to give an explanation here. I'm just saying
that's kind of what I was picking up the word time as well. Like they were in a different time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you save the ants?
I actually gave one to a friend of mine. He was supposed to take it to a lab and get it checked out, but he never did. The one that was on this wall, I went back like 2 weeks over in the south west wall, and it was gone. There was a spider over there. So it's kind of weird though, for all those months, nobody touched it. But here's the other thing about those ants. That was probably 9 months ago. And there's not been an ant in my office since then. We have ants in the bathroom and stuff. And there was no spray. The guy goes to my church's exterminator, and he hadn't sprayed inside. I asked him. He obviously hadn't gotten to my office because I'm the only one with the key to my office. But there was no pesticide sprayed. But, he sprayed pesticides, I think about a year before that in the bathroom. He told me they last about 3 months. But those ants all curled up. And so when you hit them with something like a pesticide, they're going to curl up. But I don't know how you explain the fact that they all died together at the same time, instantly, without any sign of trauma at all. And I can find them 5 months later, and especially the one, I mean, it looks perfect. I just blew me away when I saw that. So that's just another one of the synchronicities. The other one that happened was right after I got back from Roswell, and it would kind of fit close with the first orb type sighting I saw. I was looking up in the sky from my backyard. It was July 10th of 2024. And at first I look at it, I think it's like a satellite. But then I noticed something strange about it. It's oscillating. It's bouncing back and forth. And then pretty soon it started turning right. And so to me, all of those things were like signposts, because I had questions about Coachella, because first of all, I had severe nosebleeds. And I know nosebleeds in and of themselves are not enough to make you think that you were abducted or taken, because kids can have nosebleeds, but mine were severe. I don't know if this is significant or not. I can still remember that it was the right side of my nose. I can still envision the rag and with the blood all over it. But the other thing that really cued me in on Coachella is I've had them for years now, these reoccurring dreams. and I have pain in those dreams. And I guess it's fairly rare for a person to actually feel physical pain in their dreams. But imagine having the same dream over and over and over again, with the exact same pain. And so I always felt like that was Coachella. And so my mind was already starting to go that direction. These synchronicities took me back there. And then my sister told me that, this happened more than once, but she was describing one time she opened the front door. The vantage point up into the sky is about the size of a duplex. And she hears this low humming sound. And so she looks up, and there's a craft up there. She can't tell the shape of it because it's literally filling the sky. It's blotting out the stars, and it's up there. She thought about maybe 200 feet or so, and it was making that low humming sound. And so when I started putting all of this stuff together, I was like, especially the reoccurring dream, I knew that subconsciously that there was some trauma had happened to me. And I knew I needed to go and try to figure out what that trauma was. But everything seems to be pointing back to Coachella. And so that's when I was talking to my friend Mario Woods. And I told him the things that were going on. And he's like, man, you need to go see Yvonne Smith. And I don't know why, but for whatever reason, that was my hang up, is trusting people, and the second I heard her name, maybe I'd heard about her before and she was respected, but I agreed. And so Mario actually reached out for me to get this hypnotic session set up, regression session set up. But when I filled out the paperwork, there was one thing that I didn't even put on there, because I didn't think it was related. In fact, Yvonne, I had her and Mario on a podcast later, and this was afterwards. And she was talking about how experiencers can have these really weird experiences, like seeing a 5-foot owl, and it seems normal. Or they see the deers looking in with their big eyes into the house, and well, that seems normal. And then all of a sudden one day it doesn't. And so that's kind of what happened to me. It wasn't an owl, it wasn't a deer. But I've had this memory. It's not a dream. This is a memory I've had my entire life. It was kind of a flattering dream in a way. So as a boy, you just don't forget that. But I never connected it with maybe being taken or anything like that. But it was of a teenage girl in my memory. And this is the thing, I'm going to say it again. This was as real as any other memory I have. And it was of a teenage girl. She was my sister's friend. And she wanted me to go and meet her outside, sneak out at midnight with her. And so I was, 6 years old. You're pretty impressed. A teenage girl would be interested in you. And so that seemed normal until I was on my way to Roswell. I had to drive 12 hours a day for 2 days to get there. And I had a lot of time to think, but all of a sudden it just came to me. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. What does a teenage girl want to do with a 6-year-old boy? And what would I do if I had caught her? You know what I'm saying? A 6-year-old boy. And so all of a sudden it didn't make sense. And I go, wow. And then I get to Roswell, and Ben Hanson's telling the story about this lady who sees her dead mother. And so I'm in the session, I'm listening to the story, and she sees her dead mother. You can imagine she was excited to see her mom. And her mom convinces her to go with her, according to Ben. And they end up on this spacecraft. And as she's staring at her mother turns into an alien. In other words, she had been an alien the whole time.
Yeah.
And that had deceived her. And so then I'd start going, my goodness, was that really a teenage girl? My mind started racing and going. So the first thing I did was I called my sister up. As soon as I got out of the session, I went back to my hotel room and I called my sister up. And I asked her about her friend, and that's when my mind got absolutely blown. Because she told me, she said, I was only 9 years old and I didn't have any teenage friends. And on top of that, none of my friends ever spent the night. And the other thing that was weird about this girl is when I got up the next morning, she wasn't there. You think if she had spent the night with my sister, right, she would be there. Now, I'm pretty logical. I'm going to go through some other possibilities with this girl. And so I asked my sister, I said, well, did we ever have any teenage babysitters? And she said, no, we only had this one babysitter. It was an older lady and she was black. And, and I had this memory of this girl, and I can remember her long blonde hair. I can remember the tears on her shirt, different colors. They were like white, blue, and red, and just absolutely rocked my world. Simply because if I can't trust that memory, then what memory can I trust? And it just absolutely rocked my world. And so by the time you add all of this stuff up, Margie, I'm like,
yeah.
and I'd already set the session up, but I'm ready for hypnosis. Now,
Okay, I'll tell you what, we're gonna take a short break. When we come back, we're going to get into your hypnosis sessions. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this.
Tickets are now on sale for Rebels of Disclosure 2025, May 12th through the 15th in Grafton, Illinois at the beautiful Pierre Marquette Lodge and Conference Center. This will be a 4-day event with 12 speakers covering topics such as ET contact, experiencer testimonies, lost history, secret space programs, time travel, Illuminati, parallel realities, and so much more. Visit journeytotruth.online for more details.
Are you thinking about purchasing a wood-fired heating or cooking appliance but don't know where to start? The new book, Wood-Fired Heating and Cooking, will guide you through the process and make the decision much easier. Find out about wood stoves, wood-burning fireplace inserts, masonry heaters, cook stoves, brick ovens, and more. Learn about operation and maintenance, buying and storing wood, even how to make your own charcoal. A bonus section includes delicious recipes for cooking in a wood-burning oven, grill, tandoori oven, or smoker. The wise homeowner, prepper, or homesteader will have the ability to heat their home with wood when the power goes out or to save money on increasing gas bills. Wood-fired heating and cooking is available at Amazon. Visit www.woodfiredpub.com for more information. That's woodfiredpub.com. And we're back with NX News. We are here every Friday at 6 p.m., by the way. And my guest this evening is Dale Robinson. He is telling us about some very strange things that's happened to him in his lifetime. And you're just getting ready to tell us about your hypnosis session.
Yeah, I'd like to preface something before we get to that. And it'll make sense once we get to it. But the last few years, I've had a lot of trauma happen in my life. And the way I deal with trauma is I tend to go numb. Like when somebody dies, I tend to shut down, at least my emotions shut down. But so I lost my sister, I lost a stepbrother, and I lost 2 of my childhood friends all within 2 weeks of each other. And so you can imagine, I hadn't even started to deal with my sister's death when my half brother died. And then my 2 childhood friends, like my whole past was being erased. It was also during this period that I had a close family member that was suicidal. And so for 2 years, I fought like crazy to try to keep them alive and stuff. And so when I got ready to go get hypnotized, I was under a lot of stress, and I told a friend about it, and he had a technique that he thought would maybe help me to not be so stressed. And he said, well, this is what I had a friend do, and it really helped them. Said, when you go to sleep at night, close your eyes and envision a VHS player, and envision that the stress is on the movie that's in. You pull it out, then you put another one in, and this is all of your favorite places. And so you play that recording. But what happened was when I closed my eyes, I could not even envision a VHS player. Then I tried to envision a banana, a simple object like a banana with your eyes closed. I could not do it. I could not envision an apple. Now, this came into play because when I went in to get hypnotized, I think it was September 21st, on a Saturday, I was concerned how that might impact my hypnosis. And I wasn't even sure, because I never been hypnotized before, whether I could even be hypnotized. And so, Yvonne was able to hypnotize me. but the only way I can explain it is like trying to watch a movie with your eyes shut. You know things are going on, but you can't really see things. And so that first session on Saturday, the only thing that really came out of that, and it scared me a little bit, was the recurring dreams with the pain. When we tried to go there, my body started twitching and jerking, even though I couldn't see anything. And so, very, very disappointed because I drove all the way down to Southern California from where I live in Oregon. And so that night I was like, man, I got to do something. I got to have a breakthrough with being able to envision things. And so I was in my hotel room and I started working on closing my eyes and trying to imagine things because I'm serious. It was like black, looking at black. I couldn't envision anything. And so I started working on it. And pretty soon I was able to envision a stream and in the woods. I could see the water, I could see the rocks, and I knew I had a breakthrough. And so I called my wife. I said, send me a picture of the duplex that I lived in when I was 6, because I wanted to visualize, because I knew that Sunday that we'd be going back there. And so I looked at the picture, I studied it, I set it down, I closed my eyes, I tried to just relax. And I swear this happened. I swear that I don't know it was because I was hypnotized in the morning, but I really believe I went back in a hypnotic state, because a hypnotic state is just a trance. It's like you're going down the road and all of a sudden you realize that 10 miles have gone by and you don't remember any of it. That's basically a hypnotic trance that's taking place. And so I go into this trance. I'm like walking in front of the duplex. I'm walking beside it. I know that there is a field on the other side. At this point, I'm in absolute, what I feel like I'm in control. And then all of a sudden, when I get to that field, without warning, without forethought, all of a sudden I start going up in the air. And I'm just like, I have no control. I'm going up into the air. And as I look down, I can see the roofs below. I'm going higher and higher. I can see the countryside. And I'm going up, up, up. And then pretty soon, without any warning at all, I'm on this craft. And it's translucent. There's like tubing inside of it that's almost translucent as well. But at one part, it's like there's this bulge that came out. It was one of the most beautiful bluish or purplish color. And then it branched off, not like a spider web, but similar to that. And then it ended. I was out of the trance just like that. But it was absolutely amazing. I'm going to skip ahead a couple months and then I'll come back. A couple months after that, I was thinking about going into the air. And all of a sudden, this image came to me. And it was an image of a tall gray, and then it was in focus. And then next to it were 2 smaller aliens. I'm positive that they were small grays, but they were blurred out as was the background. And so I've got this image in my mind of a tall gray and 2 smaller grays. I'm watching Richard Dolan podcast, and he's got Peter Robbins on, and Peter Robbins is talking about an experience that he and his sister Helen Wheels had.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just blown away as I hear him talking about this story, because it didn't happen to him. It happened to his sister, but right in front of him, they're out playing in the yard. All of a sudden, there's a craft or something, and she starts going up into the air, and she talks about looking down, seeing the roof of her house. The other thing that people can't get a grip on this is everybody, when I tell that story, oh, that must have been scary. And I was like, no, it wasn't scary at all. In fact, Steve Neal had a similar experience, and he called it a Peter Pan moment, because you're flying, you're going in the air. I mean, it doesn't want to fly. And so, I mean, there's things in this phenomena that are scary, but that event itself was not. But anyway, she goes on a craft. She looks up. I don't do that. And when she gets on the craft, she runs into a tall gray and a small gray. And eventually she would run into more smaller grays. And so my impression of that image is, if I had stayed under hypnosis longer, that's probably what I would have seen. And then the other thing that really stuck out about the tall gray and the 2 smaller ones is when I drew them out, I drew this straight line across it. And when I looked at that, I go, man, I bet that was an examination table. And so I'm watching a child's encounter on Steve Neal's Breaking the Silence channel. And there's this image of a boy that's roughly the same age as me. He's sitting on an examination table. There is a tall gray and 2 smaller grays. And guess what? They're cut off by an examination table. And I just go, those are just too many coincidences. You know, I think we all had our experiences in the 1960s, late 1960s, or mid 1960s, somewhere in there. But I just think it's phenomenal that if you looked at those three experiences, they very much paralleled each other. But getting back to Sunday, I think it was September 22nd. That's when I was having my second session. Now I was a lot more confident going into the second session, knowing that I'd had a breakthrough on being able to envision things. It meant like when I went back to remember these things, it'd be like having your eyes open versus your eyes shut. You can be there with your eyes shut. You're not going to see anything, but with your eyes open, you're going to be able to experience everything. And so on Sunday, she got me much deeper in hypnosis. We went back into the duplex. I saw things that I won't repeat that have to do with my mom and my dad, but, and it was real and I got emotional, but she brought me back to that teenage girl. And I saw her. I saw her go into my sister's room. That's the last thing I saw of her. And so I'm convinced that I couldn't really get any more under hypnosis than I did have consciously. And so I'm convinced that she was a screen memory for what followed next. Because when she went into the room, I went into my room, which I shared with my brother Dan. We had bunk beds. I had a top bunk bed. And so I got up on the top bunk bed and I was sitting there telling myself, don't go to sleep. Don't go to sleep. I don't know if they implanted that memory in my, or what, but that's the one thing I even remembered consciously, because it wasn't a dream. It was a memory. At least that's what I thought. But I'm setting up there and then all of a sudden there's this image of an owl that comes to me. And then shortly later, there is this light behind me. And I don't know if it's like Earl Grey Anderson's portal or what. I can't tell you what it was. All I know is there was a light coming from behind me. And here's what's strange about that. There were no windows. This was a center room. There were no windows in that bedroom and stuff. And the next thing I know, it's like there's a bunch of what looks like bricks going this way. And then all of a sudden they go like that. And the next thing I know, I'm in this cavern. And it's kind of a different experience. I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't like I was walking. It was like I was being taken from place to place. But I'm in this cavern. I'm going forward. I'm going backwards. When I'm in this cavern, I can see chambers open. And I can see beings, but I'm not close enough where I can tell whether they're human or whether they're aliens. And so I'm in this chamber. And all of a sudden, I come out of this chamber, this cavern, and I'm on the outside. And I realize that I'm on a rock planet. And it was like all jagged rocks, kind of like this. And they went back, and it was just pretty much the same color. It was a dark brown with a reddish tint, the rocks were. That's how the caverns were as well. And even the bricks that were over my head. It was all the same color. And so I'm looking out, and at one point I see a craft, and it is the exact same color as the rocks. It's like it's camouflaged to blend in with the planet itself. Now, one of the things that I said, now, Margie, if you and I were in a spacecraft and we went and looked at this planet, we would think there's no life there. And yet I knew under the surface that there were these chambers that would open and shut, and that there were beings living within this planet. But on the outside, it looked like it was barren. Now, there was one thing that happened that was just pretty amazing. And that is I was looking at these peaks, and you could go back, and there was this one part that was where they were higher, but there was an opening, and all of a sudden this light was bright. And by the time my eyes finally adjusted, all of a sudden I look, and there's this crystal city in there. Most beautiful crystal city you can imagine. But almost instantly, it's like the lights went out and stuff. And I kept saying to myself, why is everything camouflaged? I wrote out my hypnosis session, I think 6 different times. I said, why is everything camouflaged? What are they hiding from? And towards the end of my time there, I saw them shooting at something. And I don't know what that has to do with, if they were under attack or what, or whether they were showing me something in the present, whether they were showing me something in the past. I have no clue what it was, but it was pretty extraordinary. Now, I have to say this up front. I don't dream of rock planets. I never thought of a rock planet in my life. And so I don't know where that came from, if it wasn't an actual, something that actually happened. And by this time, my session was almost over. And so Yvonne's trying to take me back to my safe place. And so you establish a safe place in the beginning. And so I decided I'd make the creek my safe place. And so I'm trying to go back to the creek, but instead of going to the creek, I go to this other planet. But this planet is completely different than the rock planet. This one has ponds. It has a beautiful bridge. It looks perfectly manicured. And there are bushes and trees around these ponds. And they're not like anything that I had ever seen in Earth. And so then she brought me out of that one and back. And so that ended that session right there. And like I said, it was about 2 months later that that image of the gray, the tall gray and the two smaller grays came. The next thing that happened was I was talking to a friend who's an experiencer. I started an abduction group for people who've been abducted because there's not a place for these people to go very often. And so I decided I'd start a support group, especially since I'm an experiencer, to be able to do it. Now, this lady, I'm going to call her Anne. She's kind of a private lady. And so she also had managed like these types of groups for 10, 20 years. And so she was a great asset in helping me to establish my group. And so we were on the phone talking. I'd only been talking a few minutes. And all of a sudden she said, "Dale, stop." And I'm talking maybe 5 minutes, the longest 10 minutes. I don't think it was 10 minutes. But when she said stop, I looked at the timer on my iPad and it said 42 minutes.
Oh.
Now, yeah, I came to that on my own. And then she said, "Did you notice that?" And I said, "What?" She said, "Did you notice how you were just talking a few minutes and all this time has gone by?" And I said, "Yeah." And so independently, we both realized that I'd only been talking a few minutes, and yet all of a sudden 40 some minutes are gone. And she said the other thing, I didn't experience this, but on her end, it was like she was in a tunnel. That's why she asked me to stop. And she said my voice started getting more and more intense. Well, on my end, my voice was the same. I was talking about my experiences and stuff. And so that got really, really strange because
Were you talking on the phone or on Zoom or what?
it's like a Signal conversation. So you can call people on Signal.
Okay.
It's an app and stuff.
Okay.
So we were talking. That's why when I looked at it, I could see the time. It's kind of like on the corner. I can see how long that we've been live here. And so we had been talking. And like I said, that's the first time other than maybe seeing the first orb with my wife in 2023, July 7th. But that was the first time that I had an experience, with another person. And so to have that other person have the exact same experience at the exact same time,
I wonder what happened to each of you independently or together at the same time.
Yeah, that's the mystery. And I did go back and try to get hypnotized on that. It was kind of a rough period, but let me go ahead and tell you what happened after that. I was talking to Anne in another conversation. I'll go ahead and share this. I didn't share this with the Steve Neal video because this is when you start getting out there beyond your own comfort zone, right? I mean, this stuff I just explained, Margie, is weird enough. And I'm a very rational person. I really am. I'm not an imaginative person. I'm not to go for fantasy. That's not me. People who know me will tell you that. And so I'm already stretched about as thin as I can be stretched. And I'm talking to Anne, and she asked me this question. She says, "Dale, do you believe in past lives?" And to be honest with you, if she had asked me that question 2 years earlier, my answer would have been no. And that's because of my theological training as you die and then you're judged, not for salvation, but, for what you did with your life. And so if you'd asked me that question 2 years earlier, I would have said no. But having been in the community for a while now, several years, I started opening up to the possibility. I still wasn't convinced that past lives were true. Hadn't really heard a story that was strong enough to convince me to get me over the top on believing it, but I was open to it. And so she asked me if I believed in past lives. And I said, well, I'm not sure. And so she went on to something else. That night, I was talking to another friend who does not know Anne at all. And I was just strictly talking about the missing time event. And out of the blue, she said, do you think that maybe you guys knew each other in a past life? And I'm like, I'm blown away. It's like, Anne asked me that question. Now you're asking me the question. And so, I go, well, why in the world would you ask me that question? And she said this. She said, something told me to ask you that question.
Mm.
And that really got me thinking, because I'm going, okay, sure seems like somebody wants me to make a connection to some past life where I knew Anne somewhere. Now, I'll be honest with you. The first time I met Anne, there was a sense of familiarity. I mean, she seemed familiar to me.
Mm-hmm.
And my thinking was that maybe during one of the times I was taken, maybe we saw each other. Maybe I saw her on a craft. That would be normal and stuff. And then later on, she was telling me about a couple of dreams she had where she saw me on a craft. And so that probably wasn't far-fetched. But I went back to Anne and I said, did you ask me that question because you thought that we knew each other in a past life? And ultimately she said yes. And so I don't know how you explain, she asked me the question, the other lady asked me the question, then she tells me that something told her to ask me that question. So it seems like somebody wanted us to make that past life connection. Now, I trust Anne 100%. And I even trust the other lady, because I don't know how she would know to ask that question unless somebody was guiding her. But anyway, I have Anne and I have another friend. And Anne had offered to do a reading. Now, I've never had a reading done on me in my life. But I thought, hey, I'll give it a shot. Let's see what happens. And so during my reading, she tells me not only that I'm a Nordic, she's a Nordic, but she tells me that I have the ability to fly crafts with my mind. Now, for a guy like me, that's a hard one to swallow, but I trusted her. And then my other friend, who's a Nordic, offered to do a reading, and I thought, hey, I can check and balance, right? Because they don't know each other either. And so the second lady does the reading, and not only does she tell me I'm a Nordic, but get this, she tells me that I can fly a craft with my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going,
okay.
Am I like in the Twilight Zone now? It's like, where in the world is this stuff coming? And it's not that I didn't believe him, but how do you wrap your mind around something like that? And then the Jake Barber interview came on. And I was like, wow. When he talked about this Skywatcher team he has, it's modeled somewhat after the private contractors that he worked for. But there's a word, and you probably heard of it, it's called psionics.
Yep.
And it's where with their minds, they in the contractor side, they bring these craft down. I think that's terrible. I think, what a way to introduce yourself to another species. You get their craft, you bring them down, and you take over. But under the Skywatcher program he has, they had a psionic person there, and he literally took control of the craft with his mind. And I'm going, this seemed way out there yesterday, but now that I hear somebody else saying it, it doesn't seem so far-fetched anymore. And, in what capacity and how that works, I have no explanation. All I know is that I was told that by two different people who don't know each other. And so how do I get the same message from two people who don't know each other? And here's where it gets even stranger. I go back. I went to Southern California because Steve Neal wanted to record my events, my experiences. And then I was going to go, which is only an hour away from Ventura to Pasadena, roughly that amount of time, and do a couple more hypnosis sessions. And so on the Sunday hypnosis session, when we got done, Yvonne told me that the past life was confirmed and the Nordic connection was also confirmed. And so we're going beyond just two different people telling me something, and about past lives, two different people telling me something about the Nordic connection, to it being confirmed under hypnosis. Because one of the things that Anne suspected is that maybe we knew each other in some kind of an Irish village. And when I was under hypnosis, guess where I ended up?
Irish
In
village.
It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. But so I don't know, honestly, how you explain those things away, because that's double confirmation. And I'm a person that wants data. I'm a person that wants it to make sense. I'm not just going to throw something out there, or I'm not just going to accept something just because one person tells me. But when I have two people telling me it, when I have going under hypnosis and having it confirmed again, I don't know how you explain that stuff away. I mean, I can't do it. I mean, I'm a person that always wants to go to the prosaic answer first, but kind of like the ghost story I started with. I mean, how do you explain that? How do you explain, how does wind come into a room? And even if the doors had been open, the wind would have had to have gone right, and then it would have had to gone left, and then it would have had a shot all the way down there, and somehow had enough energy. And this was powerful.
Yeah.
It did it.
That's, I've talked to so many people, and people who are experiencers and other investigators, and we will often find some kind of a connection, past life connection, or being abducted together on a craft. But now you found all of this out in a relatively short period of time, which
Right.
seems a little bit strange, because usually people find these things out over a long period of years. Why do you think that is?
I think there's an urgency or something. There's the one thing that came out of both of the readings is that there's a purpose for me being here. And that even with the podcast, even with the ex-followers, that whatever my mission is, I haven't fulfilled it yet. And so I suspect it has something to do with a purpose. And when I first went in, people were telling me they felt like I was called to be here. And when I first went in, I thought, well, there's a lot of Christians out there, because I'm a pastor, that this is going to absolutely rock their world. When they find out that they've been lied to by the church, when they find out they've been lied to by the state, when they find out they've been lied to by their government, in the sense that, we're not the only species out there. I mean, when they realize that we're not even at the top of the food chain, and I don't mean that in a sense that we're going to be eaten by something, but I mean, as far as being the alpha, the apex species on the planet or in the universe. Right. Can you imagine what that's going to do to people? And especially with Christians, it's going to, for a lot of them, it's going to rock their faith. Now, it did not rock my faith, simply because I believe, that, I'm not a religious person. Let me say it first of all. I call myself spiritual. I'm not about rules. The only rules that I have is love God, love people. But I just kind of felt like early on, and I don't know if that's still not the case, but I think it's bigger than that. But to be able to be there to help people make the transition into this new, Christians and other people make this transition into this new reality, because it's going to be hard.
And there are people like you and I and out there who do know that we're not alone, and we are going to be here to help other people deal with this transition. And it's not the end of the world. It is not the end of the world. Absolutely. No, I mean, and if you are an investigator, or you're a researcher, an author, if you've been digging into this, that they've been here forever, probably before humans have been on this planet. And it's it's an awakening process. It sounds like yours was speeded up for some reason so that you can help other people, because now it seems like you feel fully comfortable with the thought that we're not alone. And unfortunately, we are out of time for this evening. I'm going to have you come back so we can cover some more. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, my channel is Observer of Anomalous Objects. On X, I am DaleRob62. And so if you want to contact me that way as well, or you can think it is DaleRob62 at gmail.com if you want to contact me through my email as well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show with me this evening, Dale. I appreciate it.
Well, it was my honor, and thank you for having me on, Margie. I appreciate it.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Well, that is it for this evening. I'll see you here again next week at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Unex Network.